Now it's time for us to discuss more of these headlines in simple keywords with Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena. Happy Tuesday and the last day of this extended holiday.
Happy Tuesday to you too. Happy National Foundation Day.
It is National Foundation Day. I should have said that rather. That would have been better.
All right, let's jump into our keyword news portion of the day as people try to claw their way back into reality and their normal work weeks. Traffic is expected to continue to be congested. Our first keyword of the day.
Holiday traffic.
So this year's Chuseok holiday saw an increase in the number of vehicles using highways compared to last year's Chuseok. This is mostly thanks to eased virus restrictions since the pandemic. What's the latest, Adam?
Yeah, so it has been the first Chuseok holiday since the kind of ease rules of the pandemic. And of course, naturally, that would mean more people are heading out and visiting their families in their hometowns. And these family get-togethers and outings have also increased as well. Now, if we look at data from the Korea Expressway Corporation, it shows that the daily average number of vehicles using highways from September 28th to October 1st, so basically the first 4 days of the holiday, was 5.87 million. That's a near 6% increase compared to last year's Chuseok holiday. On the actual day of Chuseok itself, there was the highest number of vehicles on the road at 6.52 million vehicles. That's just over 5% increase compared to last year's Chuseok Day. This year, the holidays, of course, were extended due to the National Foundation Day, which is today, and a special holiday or a substitute holiday, if you will, yesterday, resulting in a longer break. Even on the third and fourth days of the holiday, the traffic volume did not really decrease significantly, so people were still out and about. The total toll revenue exempted for over the 4 days was 69.4 billion won, which is an increase of some 5 billion compared to last year. That basically goes to show that, of course, a lot more people were using the expressways and taking advantage of the highway toll exemptions. Now, sales at highway rest areas or rest stops also increased by more than 1.5 times compared to last year as well, even when compared to Chuseok in 2019, before the pandemic. Daily average sales at rest areas were 41% higher this year. So a lot more people are certainly taking advantage of this extended holiday. Meanwhile, traffic congestion on major expressways is gradually improving as people are traveling back home. Traffic started to ease at around 10 p.m. Last night, but getting into Seoul and within Seoul, traffic was still quite high. Express bus terminals and train stations were still busy, though, as people flocked to get tickets for their way back home. KTX trains traveling from Gangneung to Seoul, for example, were mostly fully booked, and there were no available seats on ITX trains from Chuncheon to Yongsan, and trains departing from Daejeon Station were also full, prompting holiday travelers to line up at ticket booths to inquire about standing tickets. So basically those without a seat and basically standing their way all the way to Seoul. Local airports as well, they were busy with returning passengers as well. So a lot more people are getting ready to get back to normal life after the 6-day holiday. I think a bit of a prolonged holiday hangover might be in store for these people, not us. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, there you have it.
You know what? I don't know. We've been doing this dance for weeks and months and years, Adam. And frankly, I just like having a pattern. It's more difficult to swing to kind of like a 6-day extended holiday.
I know, I can imagine.
Making our way back. I don't know. I'll take whatever is in front of me, and this is it. So take it or leave it.
It's best to get used to something rather than having to, fluctuate your body cycle and your mental cycle as well.
All right. Let's jump into our second keyword of the day.
Senior Citizens Day.
So it turns out Korea marked a Senior Citizens Day yesterday, which is carrying more meaning amid a rapidly aging society. Recent data shows that the number of seniors reaching the age of 100 is rapidly increasing. It should be a good signal, right? I mean, we're living longer and healthier life in general, but it comes with a set of social concerns, and that's something we want to address.
It certainly does, and we'll get onto those social concerns in just a little bit. But in commemoration of Senior Citizens Day, the Health Ministry gifted traditional canes called 청려장 in Korean, which symbolizes longevity and health, to the elderly who turned 100 years old this year. A total of 2,623 individuals received the cane this year. The number of centenarians has been steadily increasing each year. The numbers have been steadily increasing since 2010, when there were just 904. So basically, over the course of 12 years, a lot more people have become healthier. But as you said, there are a bit of some social concerns related to this. Now, comparing 2013 to this year, the number of seniors celebrating their 100th birthday in a single year has more than doubled in just a decade as well. This increase in the elderly population is occurring alongside the overall aging of the population. Meanwhile, according to Statistics Korea, the population of individuals aged 65 and older in Korea is expected to reach approximately 9.5 million this year. It's projected to exceed 10 million next year, indicating a continued increase in the elderly population. But this is coupled with a low birth rate as well, which is why it's a bit of a concern, economically speaking.
I mean, we've talked about it in this segment several times before. What does this mean for our pension system? Can it hold up? And the general consensus, as not at this rate anyway, intervention is necessary. And it's about also those who can't afford to live, well, I suppose, a prosperous life into their sunset years. Depression and suicide among the elderly has become an increasing concern. There was a recent study conducted to highlight these very issues. Can you tell us the details of the report?
Yeah, so there was a paper released at the 2023 Korea Welfare Panel study, and it showed that beneficiaries of state support, so your basic pension and government support for the elderly, exhibited fewer symptoms of depression than those who didn't receive it. Private support from family members, as well as recipients of just the normal national pension, actually had interestingly little effect on depression. This is likely due to the fact that the level of benefits from the national pension was insufficient, which may explain why it did not have a positive impact on reducing depression. Now, as of 2021, Korea had the highest elderly poverty rate among OECD member countries at 37.6%. The suicide rate per 100,000 elderly people stood at 46.6 in 2019, which is also the highest among OECD nations. So it is a concern that there are a lot more people living longer years, well into triple digits. But of course, they are living in poverty, unfortunately, the majority of them anyway. And it just goes to show that maybe there needs to be a fix in the national pension system. The elderly aren't just getting enough support when it comes to retirement and their old age. We see a lot more elderly people basically working to try and make a living. A lot of elderly people in their senior years in Korea are sometimes a bit too proud as well to kind of receive some help from their family members. It's just another possible reason as well. So that's why they choose to work, because they don't want to be a burden on their children and be dependent on them. So there are various factors and reasons for this, but it is a concern nonetheless.
Which is why I decided in our second hour with Professor Yang Jun-seok, we'll take a look at this preliminary draft of the national pension reform. It's complex, the idea, as you've suggested, Adam, but we nonetheless need to continue to have these discussions. Will it be able to stand the aging population? And again, with a depleting birth rate as we speak, who's going to pay for it and for how long? So we'll decipher that in our second hour. For now, let's move on to our third keyword of the day.
Conscription for men.
So the Constitutional Court has ruled that the Military Service Act, which imposes mandatory military service only on able-bodied men in Korea, does not violate the Constitution. Can you tell us more about the decision?
Yeah, so basically this stems from kind of an argument of saying, is the Constitution, does it ensure equality when it comes to mandatory military service? But for the third time, actually, the Constitutional Court issued a unanimous decision late last month declaring the constitutionality of Article 3, Paragraph 1 of the Military Service Act. Now, this provision states, quote, Korean male, this is roughly translated, of course, Korean male nationals must faithfully perform their military duties as required by the Constitution and this Act. Women may only serve in active or reserve duty by means of support. Now, the key issue was whether treating women and men differently in terms of military service obligation constitutes a violation of the principle of equality. Now, the court first noted that the question of determining the scope of conscription among citizens is a matter that should be flexibly addressed, taking into account the country's security situation and financial capacity, while ensuring that the national defense maintains optimal combat readiness amid rapidly changing domestic and international situations. Of course, vis-a-vis North Korea in this, although they didn't mention the country outright. Now, the court further explained that generally men and women possess different physical abilities, and comparatively, among about 70 countries with conscription or drafting systems, the number of countries that impose military service obligations on women is actually extremely limited. A few examples, for example, in the developed world, Israel, for example, is a country where women are also drafted. Now, the court also noted that in the long term, it is anticipated that discussions on legislative changes, such as the introduction of a gender-neutral conscription system or a shift to an all-volunteer system, should be seriously considered through social consensus. But of course, considering that South Korea is still technically at war with North Korea, for the time being anyway, the mandatory military service for men at least is likely to stay put. As I mentioned before, this is the third time the Constitutional Court has actually ruled on the provision that imposes military service obligations only on men. So it does seem like the court itself is standing its ground and saying that for the moment, able-bodied Korean men do need to serve. Women may serve a reserve or a supporting role.
So on a volunteer basis. So, all right, let's move on to our fourth keyword of the day.
House payment burden.
So the Housing Affordability Index in Korea, which measures how easy it is to buy a home, decreased for the third quarter in a row as people earned more money and mortgage interest rates fell. What's the latest on this front?
Right. So again, we have to ask the question, is this a temporary thing or is it going to be a start of a prolonged kind of trend? But according to the Korea Housing Finance Corporation, the National Housing Affordability Index dropped to 68.0 in the second quarter. This is down by about 4 points compared to the previous quarter. It's actually the lowest it's been since early 2021. Now, the index had been steadily rising, reaching an all-time high not too long ago. However, due to government policies to stabilize the housing market and lower interest rates, it started to go down late last year and continued to do so in the first and second quarters of this year. But because people are taking on more loans and housing prices are going up again, it's unclear if the Housing Affordability Index will keep going down after the third quarter. The Housing Affordability Index basically tells us how much of medium income households would spend on mortgage payments when buying an average priced home with basically a standard loan. A lower index means it's easier to buy a house, of course, while a higher one means it's harder. An index of 100 means about 25% of a household's income goes toward mortgage repayments. The index is calculated using factors like household income, housing loan interest rates, apartment prices, as well as government statistics. Now, in Seoul, the index was 165.2 in the second quarter. This is actually more than a 10-point drop from the first quarter. Although it's been dropping for 3 quarters since reaching its peak last year, it's still very high. This means middle-income families in Seoul would need to use more than 41% of their income to basically pay off their mortgage, usually an index of 130 to 140, which represents about 33 to 35% of income going towards mortgage payments is seen as an appropriate level for buying homes in Seoul. So we could just see that there is a huge difference in the ability to pay these mortgages. And if about nearly half of your income goes towards housing, then of course it is certainly difficult for people to spend their money elsewhere, especially in the midst of a high inflation at the moment.
And with that, we move on to our final keyword of the day.
Rising power demand.
So Korea's electricity consumption is expected to increase significantly in the long term due to advancement in industries like semiconductors and the growing adoption of electric vehicles. Can you run us through the forecast?
Yeah, so just to basically skim or give a brief overview of it, the Korea Power Exchange estimates Korea's maximum electricity demand is projected to rise from 150 gigawatts in 2039 to 202 gigawatts in the year 2051. And this includes all electricity demands, including your solar panels at home. Basically, there's been a rapid increase in consumption over the years, ever since 1987, when it was only 10 gigawatts. So you can certainly see the extent of demand that Korea has in terms of power. Of course, this is due to the increasing demand for power of manufacturing of semiconductors, as well as the exports of it, and new industries as well. Electric vehicles, for example, are in high demand, or is starting to get an increase in demand nowadays as well, which all is the reason why there is this kind of rapid increase in the demand of power, and it's only going to get bigger as the years go by.
Does this mean South Korea needs to diversify its energy sources, its portfolio? That's the big question at hand. Thank you very much, Arirang, for today's coverage. We'll see you tomorrow.
You're very welcome. See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.